Hey guys, welcome to another video. Firstly, before I start off, I want you guys to comment which subject you guys want me to cover more frequently, right? And without wasting any other time, let's just start off. Today's video is going to be about Essay 300, which talks about planning of an audit engagement. Okay, so in this we'll be talking about how something is planned. I've just written this down here. We'll just go through it. Okay. So we'll just go through some basics. Okay, we'll just go through some basics which talks about the objective, what is an audit plan, what is an audit strategy, who you can share it with, who you have to involve in making that strategies and everything, right? And then next we talk about preliminary engagement activities, the activities that are supposed to be done before you accept or continue an engagement. Okay, so basically the audit plan is split into two parts. Firstly, it is the preliminary engagement activities, and second is the planning activities. Okay, what comes under planning activities? Or your audit strategy, your audit plan, any change in the audit strategy or audit plan, and lastly the nature, extent and timing of direction, supervision and review. Okay, and then we'll also see what the documentation of audit plan is, right? How we're going to document the audit plan, the audit strategy, if there is any changes, how do we document that changes, or what is to be documented, everything. Okay, there are additional consideration that we'll have to give when we're taking up new audits, or like what are the things that are to be considered while making a plan, right? And then any other miscellaneous like the audit program and everything we'll discuss. Okay, but that's not in essay 300, but like we'll cover all that as well. Okay, next, moving on. Now what is essay 300? Essay 300 talks about planning of an audit engagement. Okay, next, what are the top objectives? The objectives are to ensure that the audit is performed efficiently and effectively. Okay, so before we jump into like all of this, I just want to go through what an audit plan and audit procedure is. So an audit strategy is. Okay, so an audit strategy, right? So firstly we'll talk about the audit strategy, and then we'll talk about the audit plan. Okay, so audit strategy sets the scope, timing and direction. It sets the STD of an audit, okay, and guides the development of a detailed audit plan. Okay, so we can now what can we understand by this? We understand that audit strategy, it directs, or rather it directs, or rather it sets the scope, timing and direction. It sets the scope, timing and direction of an audit, right? Direction of audit, and helps. I'm just going to write it in a different language than the one that we just read, and it also helps in preparation of a detailed audit plan. Okay, or detailed audit plan. Okay, so what can we understand by this? We can understand that the audit strategy is bigger, and the audit plan is a small part of that audit strategy, right? So the audit strategy talks about the whole scope, timing and direction of what you have to do in the audit, right? What does scope mean? Scope means how much you're going to check, meaning what level you're going to check, of how detailed you're going to do the audit, or how macro level you're going to do the audit. Okay, the timing is when you're going to do the audit. Okay, so whether you're going to do at the end of the year after the books are closed, or whether you're going to do an interim audit, meaning are you going to check the books of accounts in the middle of the year? Okay, so basically whether at the end of the year, or will you go and do regular checks in the middle of the year. Okay, next, the direction is directing and supervising your team, how you're going to direct this engagement team and everything, right? So we understand that audit strategy is bigger than the audit plan. Okay, so audit plan is more detailed, right? There are more detailed procedures written, there are more what do you say, or rather we can tell that first the audit strategy is planned, and then the audit plan is, or rather first the audit strategy is prepared, and then comes the audit plan, right? Now what is audit plan? Audit plan does only, it's very simple definition of an audit plan. Audit plan is what sets the NET of RAP? NET of RAP. RAP is risk assessment procedures. Okay, so nature, extent, and timing of the risk assessment procedures, and then NET of FAP. NET of FAP. What is FAP? It is further audit procedures. Okay, nature, extent, timing of further audit procedures. Okay, and the third part is performing procedures, performing procedures, or rather NET of procedures required by other essays. Required by other essays. Okay. So basically, audit strategy is something that sets the scope, timing, and direction of an audit, right? And then it also helps in the preparation of a detailed audit plan. Now, what is audit plan? Audit plan is a procedure that sets the nature, extent, and timing of risk assessment procedures, and it also sets the nature, extent, and timing of further audit procedures. Okay. Now this risk assessment procedures will come in essay 315, and this FAP, or rather it is a response to risk, which will come in essay 330. Okay, we have not covered that yet, so like if you know it beforehand, it's very good, right? And then firstly, what is an audit plan? Audit plan sets the nature, time, and extent of risk assessment procedures, and it also sets the nature, timing, and extent of further audit procedures, and then it also sets nature, extent, timing of other procedures required by other essays. Okay, next, now we'll dive into the chapter. Okay. So firstly, what are the objectives? What is the objective of an audit of essay 300? The objective of essay 300 is to ensure that the audit is performed efficiently and effectively. Okay, so firstly, it is the objective. First point is relating to the objectives. What are the objectives? It is to ensure that the audit is performed effectively and efficiently. Okay. Next, what is the second thing talk about? When you are making an audit plan, can you involve the engagement team? Okay, so basically, what is an engagement team? Engagement team is okay. So starting with when you're conducting an audit, like I'll just give you the hierarchy of the team. Okay, so there's the audit partner, right, who's the partner or the proprietor of the firm. Okay, and below him there's an audit manager, right? There's an audit manager, and below him there are different assistants or articles, right? And then the other any other person, okay. So these are the people that are in the team, right? So these are the people that are in the team. Now, according to this essay, you are over here. Okay, this is you. Okay, and this collectively, or rather, firstly, this entire thing, this entire group is collectively called the engagement team. Okay, it's called the engagement team. Okay. Next, now, according to this essay, you are over here. Okay, imagine you are the audit, or you are the audit partner. Okay, this audit partner signs the audit report. Okay, he signs the audit report. So what the question here, what they're asking is whether you should involve the engagement team as a whole, whether you as a partner, this partner, should involve the rest of the team. Okay, so here the answer is yes, you should involve the engagement team in the process of planning. Yes. Okay, in this case, yes, involve engagement team in planning of audit. Okay, why should we involve the engagement team in planning? It is because this audit manager may have some experience or knowledge, right, that could help us in the audit, right, because it draws on their experience and insights, right? So basically this is what the question was asking, whether you as an audit partner can involve the engagement team with regard to planning. Okay, we'll just go to the main topic. Okay, we'll just read from there. Okay, so here involvement of engagement team in an audit plan. Okay, so involvement of an engagement team in an audit plan. Okay, so according to SA 300, we can involve the engagement team in the planning and participation in discussion of an audit plan. Okay, so we can involve them in the planning and participating in the discussion of an audit plan. Secondly, as I told, involvement of engagement team draws on their experience and insight. Okay, thereby increasing the efficiency and effectiveness of audit. What is this? Where else have you read this? Increasing the efficiency and effectiveness of audit. We had studied in the initial objective. Okay, so you will see most of the topics that are given in this SA 300 will always relate to in some way increasing the effectiveness and efficiency of audit. Okay, we'll just go through that one more time. Okay, so can we involve engagement team in audit plan? Firstly, yes, we can involve engagement team in the planning and participating in the discussion of an audit. Secondly, involvement of engagement team draws on their experience and insight, thereby increasing the efficiency and effectiveness of an audit. Okay, that's it, basic. Okay, we'll just move on to the next topic, which is can we discuss audit plan with the management? Okay, can we discuss the audit plan with the management? Okay, the short answer is yes. Okay, the short answer is yes, we can discuss it with the management. Okay, so basically what they're asking here, what are they asking here? They're asking whether this engagement team that I drawn. Okay, so first the partner, the manager, and then the articles, right? So who are these people? They are the engagement team, right? Engagement team. Okay, and then there is the company, right? There's a company, and in this the management is there, right? And then those charged with governance, right? TCWG, and any other personnel, right? Whoever's in charge of the strategical direction of that company. Okay, so basically, can we share our audit plan? Can we share? So in this case, who does the audit plan belong to? Audit plan belongs to the engagement team, or rather the audit partner. Okay, so it belongs to the auditors, right? Can we share this with the company? The short answer is yes, they can. Okay, now what is the catch? They can share only elements. Okay, they can share, or rather auditor can share elements of audit plan with the management. Okay, this should be to facilitate the conduct and management of audit. Okay, the conduct and management of audit. Okay, and then there should be special care. Okay, I'm just going to write that. Okay, and then special care needs to be given so as to, or rather such that sharing of audit plan does not reduce the effectiveness of audit. Okay, is that simple? Okay, so basically what is the first thing that we saw here? We saw that the auditor can share elements, not the entire plan. He can share only certain elements of the audit plan with the management, and then that is only to facilitate the conduct and management of an audit. Okay, basically so that the audit goes very smoothly and without any hurdles, right? So to facilitate the conduct and management of the audit, okay, he can share elements of audit plan only to facilitate the conduct and management of the audit, okay. And then he also needs to take special care where sharing of the audit plan does not compromise or does not reduce the effectiveness of an audit, okay. Here instead of reduce you can use compromise also, okay. And there is also one more point. What is that one more point? One more point relates to this if sharing of audit plan with management does not relieve the auditor of his responsibility, okay, okay, ability of making audit plan, okay, or rather responsibility of audit, okay. So here just by sharing the audit plan with the management, auditor cannot relieve himself of the responsibility that he has to perform the audit plan, okay. So there are only 3 points over here, right? This is the first point, this is the second point, and this is the third point, okay. So first point is we are telling that he can share elements of the audit plan to facilitate the conduct and management of audit. What is the second point? Second point says that he needs to give special care so that such sharing of audit plan does not compromise the effectiveness of an audit, okay, effectiveness of the audit. And the third point is sharing of audit plan with management does not relieve the auditor of his responsibility of preparing and conducting an audit, okay, or planning and conducting an audit, okay. Is that clear? There's only 3 points, okay. Now we'll just go see this in the text, okay, up here, okay. Now here auditor may discuss elements of audit plan to facilitate the conduct and management of an audit engagement. So that became our first point. Second point is that care needs to be taken to ensure that such discussion does not compromise the effectiveness of an audit, okay. So the same thing, so we have to take care so that we don't disclose so much that it compromises the effectiveness of an audit, okay. So the third point is the overall audit strategy and audit plan shall remain being the responsibility of an auditor, okay. So here the auditor cannot relieve himself of that responsibility, so it will still remain the responsibility of an auditor, okay. So here the audit strategy and the audit plan shall remain the responsibility of an auditor, okay. Next next, what are the benefits of planning an audit, okay. So what are the benefits of planning an audit, okay. Benefits of planning an audit, okay. So planning involves establishing overall audit strategy for the engagement and developing an audit plan, okay. So what are planning activities? So firstly you're going to develop an overall audit strategy and then develop a audit plan, okay. So basically there's nothing here, okay. So you're just telling we're going to establish an overall audit strategy and then we're going to develop an audit plan, that's all. So audit strategy plus audit plan, okay. So these are some extra words that you will have to put in, okay. So but in essence plan, what is planning? Planning is only preparation of an audit strategy and an audit plan, that's all, okay. So firstly what will you say? Establishing overall audit strategy for the engagement and developing an audit plan, that's all, easy, right? Establishing overall audit strategy for engagement, okay, for the engagement and developing of an audit plan, okay. Next, I think that should be fair and simple, right? So this you can use as the base, you can use as a base for writing any answer. You can start off any answer by saying planning involves establishing an overall audit strategy for the engagement and developing an audit plan, and then you can talk about a bit more about what an audit strategy is. As we had discussed earlier, what is an audit strategy? It sets the scope, timing and direction for the audit, right? And it also helps in making a more detailed audit plan, okay. Fine, we'll move on to what are the benefits, okay. So here this kind of like a story that you can keep in your mind to remember this. Okay, but you'll have to remember the first thing. Okay, so firstly, what is the benefit? I'll just explain through this diagram over here, and then I'll try to help you memorize this. Okay, so firstly, the benefit of making an audit plan is that you will give appropriate attention. Okay, that you will give appropriate attention to important areas. Okay, you'll give appropriate attention to important areas. Okay, so when you give appropriate attention to important areas, okay, when you give appropriate attention to important areas, you can identify and resolve potential problems. Okay, so when you give appropriate attention to important areas, you can identify and resolve potential problems. Okay, so what is the first thing? If you give appropriate attention to important areas, right? Appropriate attention to important areas, you can identify and resolve potential problems. Okay, potential problems. Okay, next, what can you do next? After all your potential problems are solved, your audit will become more organized and easier to manage. Okay, so you can easily organize and manage the audit. Okay, so if you give appropriate attention to important areas, okay, see, I'm giving so much importance to this because this is an easy 3 or 4 marker, right? We'll just start off. What are the benefits of planning an audit? Firstly, it is you can give appropriate attention to important areas. Okay, so when you give appropriate attention to important areas, you can identify and resolve potential problems. So when you identify and resolve potential problems, organizing and managing of the audit becomes easier. Okay, so you can organize and manage the audit easily. Okay, so now what does organizing and managing the audit mean? Basically, it starts from selection of engagement team to the direction, supervision, and review of the engagement team, right? So that is basically organizing, right? So what is the next point? Next point is selection of engagement team, correct? And then direction, supervision, and review of the engagement team. And lastly, what you have to do when you are managing, you have to coordinate, right? You have to coordinate, right? So coordination of what? Work done by other auditor. Okay, work of other auditor and experts. Okay, other auditors and experts. This will come somewhere in the SA 600 series. Okay, I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact SA number, but it comes around like 615 or 630, somewhere around that it comes. Okay, so this is work of the other auditors. Okay, so you have to coordinate work of other auditors and experts. Okay, so that becomes easier. Okay, easier to coordinate the work of other auditors and experts. Okay, so we'll just go through that again. We'll just see it one more time and then we'll go off screen. Okay, so if you give appropriate attention to important areas, you can identify and resolve potential problems. So that will make organizing and managing the audit very easy. So what does organizing include? Organizing includes selection of engagement team, direction, supervision of their work, and then coordination of work done by other auditors and experts. Okay, is that clear? We'll just go off screen and we'll just try to memorize that. Okay, so now firstly, what is the benefits of an audit? I'll just try benefits of audit plan. Okay, so what is the first thing? The first item we had was appropriate attention to important areas. Okay, so when we give appropriate attention to important areas, what happens? We can we can, so when you give appropriate attention to important areas, we can identify and resolve potential problems. Okay, so when we give appropriate attention to important areas and we identify and resolve potential problems, what becomes easy? Organize and what becomes easy? It becomes easy to organize and manage the management of the audit. Okay, so what comes to your mind when I say organize and management? Obviously the engagement team. Okay, so we can, selection of engagement team becomes easier. Okay, selection of engagement team, right? You can pick people with the correct skill set, the correct the correct aptitude for that particular engagement, right? Next, fifth one, what do you do with the engagement team? You direct, supervise and review. You do DSR of the engagement team and the engagement team efforts, the engagement team's work, right? And then sixth, lastly, we coordinate. Okay, lastly it is coordinate work of other auditors, coordinate work done by other auditors. And experts also. Okay, so other auditors and experts. Okay, so this is basically benefits of an audit plan. Okay, so there are small paragraphs inside these. Okay, so there are small explanations to these. We'll just go through that and then we'll move on to the next topic. Okay, we'll just go through the book over here. Okay, yeah, so these are smaller, right? Here obviously I'll just remove all this so it becomes easier. Okay, so as we had seen, it helps the auditor give appropriate attention to important areas. Okay, so those are the keywords. Okay, it helps the auditor give appropriate attention to important areas. Okay, appropriate attention to important areas, right? It also helps to identify and resolve potential problems on a timely basis. Okay, timely basis is something that you can add. Okay, and also helps the auditor properly organize and manage the audit engagement. Okay, so that it can be performed in a more effective and efficient manner, right? Simple till now, same thing what we had seen before, right? Also helps in assisting and selection of the engagement team. Okay, that's what we have written, only selection of engagement team members with appropriate level of capabilities and competence to respond to anticipated risk. Okay, next, it also helps in facilitating the direction and supervision of the engagement team. Same, we had also studied that. And coordination of work done by other auditors and auditors of components and experts. Okay, so that as I said, it will come in the SA 600 series. Okay, so SA 600 somewhere, it will come between SA 600 to 650. Okay, next we'll move on. Okay, next, now preliminary engagement activities. Okay, so for this I'll have to give you a bit of an explanation, right? So there's a very simple way of reading this. My request is, please don't read any of this. Okay, please don't read any of this. Okay, we'll just go one by one. Okay, I'll just remove this off. Okay, I'll just remove this off and I'll remove this off as well. Okay, so firstly, all you have to remember in this case is SA 220. I'll explain SA 220 first. First we'll try to memorize it and then I'll give you the explanation so that it sits better in your head. Okay, so SA 220, SA 220, SA 210. Okay, so 220, 220, 210. Okay, so 220, 220, 210. What are the preliminary engagement activities? The activities that you are supposed to do before accepting or continuing an audit. Okay, so the activities that you are supposed to do before the engagement activities. Okay, before starting before starting any activity, these are the activities that you are supposed to do. Okay, what are these activities? Okay, firstly it talks about SA 220. Okay, what is this first SA 220? Why are there SA 2, SA 220? So I'll explain. Okay, but first we'll just try to memorize this. Okay, I'll just remove this part first. Okay, so don't read any of this. Okay, let me just remove these. Okay, these as well. Okay, firstly we have to in this we'll be checking whether as per SA 220 we perform, evaluate, establish. Perform, evaluate, establish. Okay, what are we performing? We are performing procedures as required by SA 220 for continuance of a client relationship or specific audit engagement to ensure that there is no issues with management integrity. Okay, so firstly we have to ensure that so as per SA 220 here, as per SA 220, are we performing procedures as required by the SA 220 for continuance of a client relationship of a specific audit engagement? Okay, so as per SA 220, which we will discuss soon. Okay, so as per SA 220, for continuing of client relationship. Okay, so if this comes with regard to checking whether there is management integrity or not. Okay, so we are checking if there is management integrity or not. Okay, or rather we are ensuring that there is no issue with management integrity. Okay, so here so firstly SA 220 we talk about performing procedures as required by SA 220 for continuance of a client relationship and specific audit engagement. Okay, so before continuance, okay, are we performing procedures as required by SA 220? Okay, so performing the procedures as required by SA 220 for continuance. Okay, right, so performing procedures as required by SA 220 for continuance of client relationship. Okay, so what are we checking in those procedures as required by SA 220? It is to check whether, or rather it is to ensure that there is no issue with management integrity. Okay, so we need to ensure that there is no issue with the management integrity, right? Secondly, it is evaluating. Okay, evaluating the compliance with ethical requirements including independence of auditor. Okay, this is to ensure that the auditor maintains necessary integrity and independence. Okay, so the first thing was performing, the second thing is evaluating. What did we perform in the first case? In the first case we performed procedures as required by SA 220 for continuance of client relationship, okay, and specific audit engagement. Why did we do this? Why did we perform procedures as required by SA 220 for continuance of client relationship and other specific audit engagement? To ensure that there is no issues with management integrity. Okay, so that was the first point. Okay, we'll just tick this off. Okay, next, what are we evaluating? We are evaluating compliance with ethical requirements including independence. This is to ensure that auditor maintains necessary integrity and independence. Okay, I think there's a little bit of text on there. No, okay, done. And lastly, as what is this SA 210? SA 210 was covered in the previous video, which talks about agreeing the, or rather accepting or continuing an audit engagement. Okay, so accepting or continuing an audit engagement. Okay, so firstly, establishing an understanding of terms of engagement to ensure that there is no misunderstanding as to the terms of engagement. That's all. Okay, clear? Okay, so there was SA 220, SA 220, SA 210. Okay, so as per SA 220, you're going to perform procedures as required by the SA 220 for continuance of client relationship and specific audit engagements. This is to ensure that there is no issue with management integrity. Okay, what is the second point? The second point was evaluating the compliance with ethical requirements to ensure integrity, or rather to ethical requirements including SA 220 talks about evaluating compliance with ethical requirements including independence. Okay, this is to ensure that the auditor maintains necessary integrity and independence. Okay, next, what did we see about SA 210? It was to establish an understanding of the terms of engagement as per SA 210. This is to ensure that there is no misunderstanding as to the terms of engagement. Okay, so there are three things that you have to do during do for the preliminary engagement activity. Okay, as you'll have to do three things before you start your engagement activities. Okay, just go off screen. Okay, I'll just explain what is there in SA 220 first. Okay, so SA 220 talks about accepting or continuing an audit engagement. Okay, here as per SA 220 you are required to ensure that there is no issues. Okay, so there no issues with integrity of management and capability and competence of the audit team. Okay, and this compliance with ethical requirements. Okay, that the auditor is complying with the ethical requirements with regard to integrity and independence. Okay, and any other significant matter. What is that? Any other significant matter that may come in other SAs, right? So in this case, as per SA 210. Okay, so now I'll just give you a quick recap. Okay, so the first thing that we saw was what is in an audit, or rather what is in planning. Okay, so your planning includes two parts. The first it is the preliminary engagement activities. Okay, so we are over here right now. Okay, and then what does it also include? It includes the actual planning activities. Okay, planning activities. Okay, so what comes under this preliminary engagement activities? Okay, so there are three things that you are supposed to do, right? One is as per SA 220 and 210. Okay, I'll just remove this so you guys understood where we are, right? So we're talking about planning as per SA 300. We're talking about planning, and planning includes two parts. Okay, so the first part is preliminary engagement activities, and the other part is the actual planning activities, where we talk about the audit strategy, the audit plan, right? Any change in the audit plan or any changes in audit plan or audit strategy, right? And any other developments. Okay, so now we are over here, we are discussing what are the preliminary engagement activities. Okay, I'm just going to erase that. Okay, so the preliminary engagement activities, what are they? What are the preliminary engagement activities? They are firstly as per SA 220 and then lastly as per SA 210. Okay, so firstly we have to what are these? Perform. Okay, here in this we're going to perform. Next we're going to evaluate. Yeah, evaluate. And lastly we're going to establish. Okay, so here this is just to memorize. Okay, so what are we going to perform? We're going to perform procedures required by SA 220 regarding continuance of client relationship or client relation and other specified audit engagement. Okay, other specified audit engagement. Okay, this is to ensure that there are no issues with management integrity. Correct. And secondly it was to evaluate what? Evaluate compliance with ethical requirements including independence. Okay, this to ensure that there are no issues, or rather the auditor is maintaining required integrity and independence. Okay, lastly, to establish common understanding as to the terms of engagement as per SA 210. This is to ensure there is no misunderstanding. Between the management and auditor. There's no misunderstanding of what? Between auditor and management and auditor with regard to the terms of engagement. Okay, is this clear? Okay, so firstly, what had we seen? As per SA 220, we have to perform procedures as required by SA 220 regarding the continuance of client relation and other specified audit engagement. Right? This is to ensure that there are no issues with management's integrity. Okay, and then the second point was to evaluate compliance with ethical requirements, including independence. Okay, here we are checking whether the auditor has the necessary integrity and independence for continuing the audit engagement. Okay. Lastly, with regard to SA 210, what was it? It was establishing a common understanding as to the terms of engagement as per SA 210, and this to ensure that there is no misunderstanding between management and auditor with regard to the terms of engagement. Okay, I think that is sufficiently clear, and we can move on to the next topic. Okay. Now we're moving on to the actual planning activities. Okay, we're talking about the planning activities. What comes under planning activities? Firstly, it is the audit strategy. Okay, so what is an audit strategy? Audit strategy sets the scope, timing and direction. Okay, it sets the STD of audit and development of detailed audit plan. Okay, so it sets the scope, timing, direction of an audit and guides the development of a detailed audit plan. Okay, next, how audit strategy helps an auditor. How does audit strategy help an auditor? Firstly, it talks about the nature of resources, the extent of resources, timing of resources and management of the team. Okay, so NET. Okay, nature of resources, timing of or extent of resources and timing of resources. Okay, so basically we'll just discuss one by one. Okay, here with regard to nature. Okay, the nature of resources to be deployed for a specific audit area, use of appropriately experienced audit team or involving experts. Okay, whether this audit requires experts or what kind of resources this particular audit engagement requires. Okay, next, extent of resources that is to be allocated to the specific audit areas, such as number of team members, extent of review required or the audit budget in hours. Okay, so this is basically the explanation. Okay, next, lastly, the timing. Okay, so when the resources need to be deployed, whether at the end of the year or whether during the year. Okay, so depending on how the auditor feels, okay, with regard to after doing the risk assessment procedures, he will understand whether these procedures or the audit needs to be timed at the end of the year or during the year. Okay, next, here in case of management of an audit, management direction and supervision of the team, briefing and debriefing, or when engagement partner or rather when the engagement partner or manager review your work. Okay, so basically that is talked about in the audit strategy, or how it helps the auditor, right? So firstly, it helps in picking the nature of resources required to complete or rather to perform in the specific audit areas, right? What kind, whether experts will be required, right? So those are covered in the nature. Okay, second one is extent of resources, right? How many number of engagement team members is required, how much review is required of their work, and and how much audit budget hours, or how much audit budget in hours is required, right? And last but one is the timing. Okay, so what talks about the timing, whether at what time these resources need to be deployed. Okay, and lastly, management direction and supervision of the team, briefing and debriefing about information, and when engagement partner or manager reviews your work. Okay, so that comes under management. Okay, so very simple audit strategy. I think we can move on to the next topic. Okay, so now what are the factors involved in establishing an audit strategy? Okay, so this is a very good 5-mark question which has come very often. Okay, so this is very, very important. Okay, so the factors involved in establishing of an audit strategy. Okay, so firstly, we'll try to memorize these keywords. Okay, or these the shortcut or the short forms, and then we'll dive into the what the actual what they mean in detail. Okay, so that is also ready, right? So we'll just memorize it first, and then we'll jump into the detail. Okay, so firstly, it is characteristics and scope. Okay, that is CS. RO, reporting objectives. ETE is engagement team efforts. PEAOE is preliminary engagement activities and other engagements. And lastly, it is NET of resources. Okay. So what are the factors that are involved in audit strategy? CS, RO, ETE, PEAOE, and NET of resources. CS, RO, ETE. I think this is very rhythmic, so you can tell together. CS, RO, ETE, CS, RO, ETE, CS, RO, ETE. Okay, so these are the 3 points. What is CS? It is characteristics and scope. CS, RO. RO stands for reporting objectives. Okay, and third one is ETE. That is the engagement team efforts. PEAOE is preliminary engagement activities and other engagement, and lastly it is NET of resources, nature, extent and timing of resources. Okay, so these are the 5 things that are these are the 5 factors involved in the establishing audit strategy. Okay, involved in establishment of an audit strategy. Okay, so CS, RO, ETE, PEAOE, and NET of resources. Okay, we'll just talk about we'll just start off with this. Okay, right now, what is this characteristics and scope? Meaning characteristic and scope of the audit. Okay, what kind of audit is actually required? Okay, so for that, to understand that, you will have to understand what AFRF it has. Okay, what is the entity's applicable financial reporting framework. Okay, and then you have to find out if there are any industry specific reporting requirements. Okay, so if there is any industry specific reporting requirements, maybe an alcohol industry will require specific industry specific reporting requirements, right? So with regard to how much they had sold, maybe it requires, right? Next, the nature of business, whether it is a big business or whether it's a small shop or whether it's a medium sized entity, right? And audit evidence of previous audit. Okay, so audit evidence of previous audit, meaning if there was any contradictions between the audit evidence and the assertions in the previous audit. Okay, so that will also factor the audit strategy. Okay, so if there's a lot of evidence and lot of problems in key areas, you will change the audit strategy in that particular way. Okay, so that's why characteristic and scope of the entity is very important. Okay, so identifying characteristics and defining the scope. Okay, so first thing is what you have to, why characteristics and scope are important is because firstly it depends on which applicable financial reporting framework the entity is required to follow, and whether there are any industry specific reporting requirements, and lastly, or rather last but not the least, next one being nature of business, and lastly the audit evidence of previous audits. Okay, so that talks about characteristics and scope. Okay, next, when it comes to reporting objectives. Okay, so to plan to plan timing of audit procedures and nature of communication. Okay, so how we're going to communicate, or how we're going to plan the timing of the audit procedures, right? When are we going to perform the procedures, and nature of communication, how we're going to communicate the progress, or how we're going to communicate everything, right? So when it comes to reporting objectives, we are talking about the reporting objectives of both the firm and the auditor. Okay, so here the entity's timetable for reporting, meaning at what times do they have to report, whether they have to report at the end of the year, right, of the end of the year, like normal usual entities, or whether they have to do quarterly reporting, right? This is for the listed entities which have to do the LODR requirements, right, listing obligation and disclosure requirements. So they will have to do reporting quarterly, right, and one at the end of the year, so they'll have to do both. Okay, so either one or both, so depending on that, that will also change the audit strategy, right? So if a company requires quarterly reporting, rather it has to report quarterly, then you will also change your audit strategy in a way that you perform it quarterly, right? So that is very important. So that's how reporting objective acts as a factor in this case. Okay, next, organization of meetings and or rather organization of meetings for discussion, nature, extent of timing of audit work with management. Okay, so in case you're going for an inventory valuation, or you're doing a stock verification, then you will have to discuss with management that at this time we're going to perform this procedure there, right? So for discussing the nature, extent and timing of audit work with management. Okay, third is discuss expected type and timing of audit report. Okay, so we're going to give them a timeline of when they can actually expect the audit report. Okay, so what kind of audit report, or rather what is the format of the audit report, and what is when they're going to receive the audit report. Okay, next, discuss expected communication regarding status of work, and lastly expected communication between the engagement team members. Okay, so just come from the top again. Okay, so here to plan the timing of audit procedures, firstly when it comes to reporting objectives, we are going to plan the timing of audit procedures and nature of communication, how we are going to communicate. So there are only two things that reporting objectives mean. Okay, so that we're going to talk about timing of the audit procedures and nature of communication. So how, when we are going to perform, and how we are going to communicate. Okay, so those are the two things that come under reporting objectives. Okay, so what is the first thing? The first thing is the entity's timetable for reporting. Okay, so the entity's timetable for reporting is whether they are required to do it at the end of the year, or rather do they have to do it for the full financial statement from the start to the end, or whether they have to report it on quarterly basis. Okay, next, organization of meetings for discussing NET of audit work with management. Okay, so when you're going to meet, okay, so that you can organize the meetings with the management, right? So that will also place a lot of significance on your audit strategy. Okay, next, discussing engagement type, timing of audit report. Okay, so discuss expected type and timing of audit report. Lastly, discuss expected communication regarding the status of work, and lastly the expected communication between the engagement team members. Okay, so how much communication is required between the engagement team members. Okay, so the last two are regarding the communication, right? So just go through this one more time, and then we'll go off screen and try to memorize it. Okay, so to plan the timing of audit procedures and the nature of communication. Okay, so reporting objectives talks about two things, and just, so firstly it is the timing of audit procedures, and secondly it is the nature of communication, or rather I'll just put communication. Okay, communication with management. Okay, so first we're going to talk about entities timetable. Okay, and then we're going to talk about the organization of meetings. What are we going to do in these meetings? In these meetings we're going to discuss NET of audit work. Okay, NET of audit work that is to be performed. Okay, third point is discussing the expected type and timing of audit report. Okay, next, and the expected communication with regard to status of work, and lastly expected communication expected communication between engagement team members, okay. Very simple, right? Next we'll move on to engagement team efforts, okay. CSROETE. Now we're at ETE stands for engagement team efforts, okay. So now what are we going to see in this? The auditor directs the engagement team efforts towards significant matters as determined by professional judgment, okay. So significant material transactions, account balances and disclosures, okay. So the auditor is going to direct the engagement team efforts towards significant material transactions, right? They're going to direct it towards significant accounting balances and then the transactions and disclosures, okay. So the auditor is going to direct engagement team efforts towards significant matters as determined by professional judgment. How is he going to determine whether that particular item is significant or not? That is through professional judgment, okay. It could be significant material transactions or account balances or disclosures, okay. Next, now what are the factors involved in judging where engagement team efforts is to be put, okay. So firstly it is volume of transactions, okay. So how many number of transactions are there, change in industry regulation and reporting requirement, change in FRF and change in legal environment, okay. So in this engagement team efforts, what did we see? We saw that what does engagement team efforts actually mean, okay, in this point, okay. That means the auditor is going to direct engagement team efforts towards significant matters as determined by his professional judgment, okay. It could be significant material transactions, account balances and disclosures, okay. What are the factors that affect this engagement team efforts? There are only 4 things. First one being the volume of transaction, second one being change in industry standards and reporting requirements, rather industry regulation and reporting requirements, and third being change in financial reporting framework, and lastly change in legal environment, okay. Next, okay, when it comes to PEAOE, we are going to consider preliminary engagement activities and knowledge from other engagements. What are some of the examples? Only the first one is the example, second one is just a point that ICI had added in the book, okay. So the first example is results of previous engagement regarding the effectiveness of internal control, deficiencies and actions taken, okay. And we, according to this point, we have to emphasize to the engagement team to keep a questioning mind and practice professional skepticism during collection and evaluation of evidence, okay. So these are basically the points, okay. Halfway done, I think. So we'll just go off screen and try to memorize this, okay. So these are factors factors affecting audit strategy, right? What are the short forms that we have seen? There was CS, RO, ETE, and lastly PEAOE, right? So what did we seen in this? What does CS mean? Characteristics and scope, or rather identifying characteristics and defining the scope. Okay guys, this is like, I'm not seeing anything, I'm just trying to write it, okay, from memory. So I would suggest you guys to do the same, okay. Identifying characteristics and defining scope, right? In this, what are the factors that affect, in this case, the applicable financial reporting framework affects our audit strategy. What else affects the audit strategy? If there's any industry specific reporting requirements, okay, if there's any industry specific reporting requirements. What was the third point? The third point was relating to the third point was relating to the nature of business, right? Nature of business. And lastly evidence of previous audit. Okay, next, this what was RO? RO was reporting objectives. So now what did we see in reporting objectives? We saw that it talks about timing of audit procedures, and second one was nature of communication, right? Okay, so now in this, what are the 5 things that affected the reporting objectives? So firstly, it was the entities reporting timetable, right? So entities reporting timetable. Secondly, I'm just going to put 1 2. Okay, so entities timetable. And secondly, the organization of meetings, right? Organization of meetings and discussion of nature, extent and timing of audit procedures, right? Or rather audit work, right? Next, what was the third point? The third point was regarding discussion with management, right? Discussion with management with regard to this was about the expected type and timing, right? Expected type and timing of audit report. Fourth point was expected communication, right? Expected communication with regard to completion of work, or rather completion of audit. Okay, next, the fifth point was, what was the fifth point? It was expected communication between engagement team members. Okay, next, what did we see in engagement team efforts? We saw that the auditor directs, right? He directs engagement team efforts towards specified or towards significant matters right, as determined by professional judgment. Okay, relating to significant material transactions, account balances or disclosures. Okay, next, what did we see in engagement team efforts? Or rather, we saw factors affecting engagement team efforts. Firstly, it was the volume of transactions, right? Secondly, it was change in industry requirement, right? Thirdly, it was change in financial reporting framework. And lastly, it was change in legal environment. Okay, Okay, next, lastly, what did we see in PEAOE? PEAOE full form is preliminary engagement activities, and results of other engagements. Okay, now what did we also see here? We also saw that the example was results of previous engagement regarding effectiveness of internal control, deficiencies and actions taken. So this will also affect the audit strategy. Okay, and what was the second point? What is the point? It told that the auditor should encourage engagement team to have questioning mind and to exercise professional skepticism, right? So these were the factors affecting the audit strategy. Okay, next we'll move on to the next part, which talks about the audit plan. Okay, so what is the audit plan? Audit plan talks about the NET of RAP, NET of FAB and other audit procedures so that the audit is conducted as per the essays. Okay, so NET of RAP, NET of FAB and other audit procedures. Okay, very simple. What is audit plan? Audit plan talks about NET of RAP, NET of FAB and other audit procedures so that the audit is conducted as per essays. Okay, next, audit plan records key decisions considered necessary to plan the audit. Okay, so audit plan records key decisions considered necessary to plan the audit. Okay, next, audit plan serves as a record for proper planning and can also be reviewed prior to performance of audit procedures. Okay, next, now when can there be a change in audit strategy and audit plan? Okay, so can there be a change in audit strategy and audit plan? Answer is yes. Okay, you can change the audit strategy and audit plan when there are unexpected events, change in conditions or evidence obtained from audit procedures. Okay, so if the audit evidence provides some kind of a contradicting meaning completely opposite of what was found before. Okay, or what was assumed or what you have known before. Okay, suppose you thought the internal control was very good and then you're finding evidence that the internal control is actually very bad, so that is a contradictory evidence, right? So when can you change the audit strategy and audit plan? When there are unexpected events, change in conditions and audit evidence obtained from audit procedures. Okay, next, now what are the examples of this? This is revised. There is a revised risk of material misstatement, right? Info different from those available during planning. Okay, so there was something during planning, but when you actually perform the audit procedures, you're getting a different information. Okay, next is evidence from substantive procedures is contradictory from test of control. Okay, so when you did substantive procedures, meaning more detailed procedures, you're finding contradictory evidence to those that you found when you did test of control. Okay, very simple, right? So can you change the audit strategy and audit plan? Yes, when there is any change in events, change in conditions and new evidence is obtained. Okay, next we're going to talk about direction, supervision and review. Okay, so auditor shall plan the NET of DSR, nature, extent and timing of direction, supervision and review. Okay, NET of DSR shall consider the following factors. Okay, so size and complexity, area of audit, assessed room and capability and competence of the auditor. Okay, of the audit team also. Okay, so size and complexity, area of audit, assessed room and capabilities and competence. Okay, Next, documentation of audit strategy and audit plan. Okay, so you have to document the overall audit strategy, the audit plan, and significant changes during the audit engagement and reasons for such changes. Okay, so when we're talking about audit strategy, what are you going to document? We're going to document key decisions considered necessary to properly plan and communicate significant matters to the engagement team. Okay, so the key decisions that are considered necessary to properly plan and communicate significant matters to the engagement team. Okay, what are we going to record in the audit plan? Record of proper planning of audit procedures. Okay, so that they can be reviewed and approved prior to performance. Basically, this is the point that we read in the topic itself. Okay, now coming to the significant changes, how are we going to document those? Okay, explain why significant changes were made to the overall audit strategy finally adopted. Okay, so first explain why those significant changes were made and what was the strategy and audit plan finally adopted for the audit, and it reflects appropriate response to the, or rather if it reflects appropriate response to the significant changes. Okay, you have to give three things: explain why you made those significant changes, secondly what is the overall audit strategy and audit plan finally adopted, and lastly it reflects appropriate response to the significant changes. The next topic here is initial audit engagement, meaning if you are going to a particular entity to perform the audit for the very first time, meaning they've not been a client of yours before. Okay, so in those cases what should you consider in SA 300? Okay, so what is SA 300? SA 300 is planning, right? So while planning your audit, what are the things that you're supposed to consider extra for new clients? Okay, or rather new I'll just write new clients as well because it's easier to understand. Okay, so basically what we're trying to understand here is what are the extra activities that we are supposed to perform, or what are the extra procedures, or what are the things that we need to do while planning for a new client. Okay, or to an entity that has not been our client before. Okay, we'll just start off. Okay, so obviously the purpose and objective is the same. What is the objective of audit? Objective of audit, you remember, as per SA 200, what is the objective of audit? It was to obtain reasonable assurance that the financial statements were free from material misstatement, right? And to obtain assurance that, or rather it was to obtain reasonable assurance that there was no material misstatement, whether due to fraud or error, right? And then to obtain assurance that the financial statements were prepared in all material respect in accordance with applicable financial reporting framework, and report and communicate, right? Or rather communicate as per essays. Okay, and communicate any findings as per the essays, right? So that was as per SA 200, right? Those objectives so as per SA 200, your objectives, right, whatever your objective was, it will be the same. Okay, so the purpose and objective of this audit is also the same. Okay, but there is a need to expand the planning activities. So obviously we'll have to plan a bit more in case of an initial audit, right? Or when we're auditing for the first time, because we won't know anything about the entity, we won't know how their internal control is, we won't know how the management is, whether the management has integrity, right? So we're just entering that company. We'll just assume that it's a brand new company and we don't know anything about it, so we'll have to obviously plan more for that. Okay, next, performing procedures required by SA 220 regarding acceptance. Okay, if you remember what we had studied in preliminary engagement activities, right? In preliminary engagement activities we had seen, as per SA 220, we had talked only about continuance, right? We had talked only about continuance. That was for an entity which was which was not a initial audit engagement, right? For an entity where we were conducting subsequent audit engagements, right? Or rather we have done some other engagement before, and now so we know how that company is, right? So here, performing procedures required by SA 220 regarding acceptance, we'll have to follow that. Next, communication with predecessor auditor, right? So before you, who was the auditor, with that person you'll have to communicate, and you'll have to find out more about the entity. Okay, so whatever findings he had, whether this is done, like usually they'll ask whether remuneration was received, was there any problem regarding payment of remuneration, was there any problem regarding the internal control, right? So what we have to also remember is the predecessor auditor's working paper, the audit documentation is not going to be given to, or rather the current auditor has no right to ask for the predecessor auditor's documentation. Okay, so he can just communicate, try to establish some communication with the predecessor auditor and try to gain some knowledge about the firm. That's all. Okay, next, other procedures as required by quality control of firm. Which essay talked about quality control? There was obviously our SQC1, right? And there was also one more, if you remember. Okay, so here this was the extra considerations that we have to give for an initial audit engagement. Okay, we'll just go through it one more time. Okay, so the first point is the purpose and objective is the same. Okay, so the purpose and objective of this audit engagement is the same. Okay, we are going to obtain a reasonable assurance. That's all. Okay, that the financial statements as a whole are free from material misstatement, whether due to fraud or error, right? Next, there is a need to expand planning activity, so we'll have to plan a bit more. Okay, that is also done. Next, performing procedures required by SA 220 regarding acceptance. Okay, so that is, we have to perform activities or rather procedures required by SA 220 regarding acceptance. Okay, next, communication with predecessor auditor and other procedures as required by quality control of the firm. Okay, so this is also like, if the firm has its own quality control procedures and policies, it will have to follow that also. Okay, so the auditor will also have to follow those quality control measures. Okay, we'll just try to go off screen and write it. First one was purpose and objective is same, right? Next, we'll have to there is a need to expand planning activities, right? There's a need to expand planning activities. Right? Next, third point, we have to perform procedures as required by SA 220 regarding acceptance or continuance. Regarding acceptance, okay, here we have not yet accepted, right? Or this is our first time, so we'll have to check whether we have to perform procedures as required by SA 220 regarding their acceptance. Okay, next, 4, establish communication with predecessor auditor. Okay, establish communication with predecessor auditor. Okay, meaning whoever the auditor was prior to the current auditor. Okay, next, 5th one, any other quality control measures of the firm. Okay, any other quality control policies of the firm. Okay, clear? Right. So firstly, the purpose and objective is the same. Okay, there is a need to expand planning activity since it's a new firm, and then we'll have to perform procedures as required by SA 220 regarding regarding acceptance, not continuance, regarding acceptance, and this is to establish communication with predecessor auditor, and lastly, other quality control policies of the firm also have to be followed. Okay, next, now this is also come for a few marks actually. Okay, so they'll just give this: planning is a continuous process, expand. Okay, planning is a continuous process, comment. Okay, so you'll have to be careful over here. Okay, we'll just go through this. Okay, firstly, it is not a discrete phase. What does discrete phase mean? It is not a one-off activity. Okay, it is a discrete, meaning is like it can exist without any other thing existing also. Okay, so that is called discrete. Okay, and next, planning is a continual and iterative process. What is iterative means? Like one after another. Okay, so like after one ends, the other one will begin. Okay, so it is a continuous and iterative process. What does it mean? It begins shortly after the completion of previous audit. Okay, so where it will start, or rather it will begin shortly after the completion of previous audit. Okay, and then it continues till the completion of the current audit. Obviously it will continue till the completion. Okay, it includes consideration of timing of certain activities and audit procedures prior to performance of further audit procedures. Okay, next, planning involves performance of analytical procedures for risk assessment. Okay, so we are going to do analytical procedures for assessing risk, and then we're going to assessing materiality, understanding legal and regulatory framework, and involvement of experts and other risk assessment procedures. Okay, so what does planning involve? Planning involves performance of analytical procedures. From those analytical procedures we can assess materiality. Okay, we'll just try to slowly link one after another. Okay, so performance of analytical procedures for risk assessment. When we assess the risk, we'll be be able to assess materiality. After we assess the materiality, what we're going to gain an understanding of the legal and regulatory framework, and then involvement, we're going to involve certain experts, and we're going to perform other risk assessment procedures. Okay, so there are 5 things here. Firstly, we're going to perform analytical procedures to assess for risk assessment. Secondly, we're going to assess materiality. Third, we're going to gain an understanding of the legal and regulatory framework. We're going to involve experts, and we're going to perform other risk assessment procedures. Okay, next we'll move on to audit program. Okay, so what is an audit program? Audit program is a series of verification procedures to be applied to the financial statements and accounts of a company to obtain sufficient and appropriate evidence in order to express an informed opinion on the statements. Okay, firstly, it is a series of verification procedures. What is audit program? Audit program is a series of verification procedures. It is to be applied to the financial statements and accounts of a company. Okay, where is those series of verification procedures to be applied? It is to be applied on financial statements and accounts of a company. Okay, third, why is it done? Okay, so basically, if you remember this, right? If you remember this is basically where those verification procedures are applied, right? And this is for what they are applied. Okay, for what those verification procedures are applied, and this is our overall objective. Okay, I think this is pretty simple, right? So firstly, it is a series of verification procedures, and it is to be applied on the we'll just do it with this. Okay, it is a series of verification procedures. Where is the verification procedures to be applied? It is to be applied on financial statements and accounts of a company. For what is it going to be applied? To obtain sufficient and appropriate evidence. And lastly, what is the overall objective? It is to express an informed opinion on the statements. Okay, we'll just start from the beginning, but we won't say all this. Okay, but we will tell it in our head. Okay, so it is a series of verification procedures to be applied on the financial statements and accounts of a company to obtain sufficient and appropriate evidence, and lastly, in order to express an informed opinion on the financial statements or on the statements. Okay, next, so that is audit program. Okay, now this is another question, very direct question. Okay, is one audit program suitable for all? Okay, so the answer is one audit program is not suitable for all. Okay, so each company or each organization will require a different audit program. Okay, so as you perform separate audits, it will require separate audit programs. Okay, so all businesses are not the same. They vary in the following. Okay, they vary in nature, size, capital raised, internal control, regulatory framework, and nature of work to be performed. Okay, so in these 6 places they vary. Okay, firstly it is NSE IRN. Okay, NSE IRN. Okay, so obviously in that nature, meaning it can be a manufacturing entity, it can be a service based entity. So depending on that, our audit program will slightly change. Okay, so we'll perform more verification, or rather we'll perform more stock verification for manufacturing entities where inventory is there. But in cases of service industry, we won't require that much amount of stock verification, right? So the nature will change the audit program, the size of the entity. We can't use the same for auditing Reliance, and then we can't use the same for auditing one small supermarket, right? So the size will completely vary, right? Next, capital raised is also almost interrelated with the size itself, because more the capital, the bigger the size, right? And then the internal control of the firm. If the internal control is good, then you will perform more test of control and less substantive detail, or reasonable amount of substantive procedures. Okay, but if internal control is very bad, then you will not do test of control at all. You will directly go to substantive procedures, right? Next, regulatory framework and applicable laws. Okay, so depending on what your reporting objective is, or what is required by the regulatory framework, your audit program will change. Okay, because for companies there is a different requirement. For firms there is a lesser requirement. Maybe it is an audit only, but the requirement is lesser. Okay, you don't have to because for companies you'll have to follow CARO, and you'll have to give that report as well. Those checks also you'll have to do, right? But in case of firms, you won't have to delve into that much. Okay, next, nature of work to be performed. Obviously this is like a combination of all of them, right? So because there is a change in nature, size, capital raised, in internal control and regulatory framework, obviously our nature of work to be performed will change. Okay, next, so that is the reason one audit program is not suitable for all the companies. Okay, we go for the next one. Okay, now this is framing of an audit program. How do you make an audit program? Like, how do you make an audit program? Okay, so first we'll have to give it's the same as the previous question. Okay, so it is the same as the previous question. Why you cannot use the same audit program for all entities? The same is the first part. Okay, so because firstly you will have to consider the nature, the size, the capital raised, dependability of internal control, and scope of work to be performed, and you have to ascertain the minimum essential work that is to be performed. Okay, so what is the minimum essential work that is to be performed? Okay, so you'll have to consider nature, size, capital raised, dependability of internal control, and the scope of work that is to be performed. So, and you have to ascertain minimum essential work that is to be performed. Okay, and as you perform the audit, you will get to know that there are certain relevant things that you had not added before. So you will add those relevant relevant areas. Okay, so if any area was initially left out but now is considered relevant, then add it by altering the program. Okay, and if you find any of the procedures are considered unnecessary beyond reasonable doubt, then exclude it by altering. Okay, so basically first you have to consider the nature, size, capital raised, dependability of IC, and the scope of work to be performed to ascertain your minimum essential work that is to be done. And then after you're doing, you'll find that there are some relevant areas which you had not taken before, that you added into your audit program by altering it. And then as you perform the audit, you also got to know that there were unnecessary procedures beyond a reasonable doubt. Okay, meaning a reasonable person would come and tell that these procedures are not necessary. Okay, so you are ascertaining that certain procedures are unnecessary beyond reasonable doubt, so you can remove those as well. Okay, and lastly, auditor must encourage his assistants to keep an open mind. Further, he must also encourage them to report significant matters that have come to their notice to their seniors, managers, partners, or proprietors. Okay, so what is in the audit program? Firstly, he'll have to ascertain, I'll just remove all these markings. Okay, so he'll have to ascertain the nature, size, capital raised, internal control, dependability of internal control, and scope of work to be performed to ascertain the minimum essential work. And then he will have to, as experience is gained through the performance of audit, if he finds any relevant area, he'll have to add it by altering the audit program. Thirdly, if he finds any area that is, or if he finds any procedure that is unnecessary beyond a reasonable doubt, then he can delete it or remove it by altering the program again. Okay, and lastly, he has to encourage his assistants to keep an open mind, and he must encourage them to also report significant matters to their seniors or the partners or the managers. Okay, so this is framing of an audit program. Okay, very simple, right? Just move on. Okay, now what are the factors that you should consider while preparing an audit program? Okay, firstly, you have to stay within the scope and limitation of work. Okay, so whatever is within the limitation, only that you will have to focus on. Okay, don't bring unnecessary procedures. As we discussed in framing of an audit program, we had removed any unnecessary procedure. So we have to stay within the scope and limitation of work, and it has to be a written program. Okay, it has to be a written program. Okay, third, determine which evidence is reasonably available. Okay, which is easily available, because we had studied in the first chapter that the reliability of evidence should be balanced with the cost of getting that evidence. Okay, so like there could be evidence that could be found only if 10 people worked on it, right? But if there was a more reasonable evidence that could be found with lesser number of people working on it, then you will obviously have to go for that, because there should be a balance between the cost of that evidence and the reliability of that evidence, right? Next, identify best evidence for obtaining satisfaction. Okay, so firstly, you'll have to determine which evidence is reasonably available and identify the best evidence for obtaining the satisfaction. Okay, next, apply only those steps and procedures that are useful for accomplishing the objects. Okay, first we'll just come from the top. Okay, firstly, you have to stay within the scope. Okay, try to close your eyes and tell it. Okay, so firstly, stay within the scope, have a written program. Third, determine which evidence is reasonably available and identify the best evidence to obtain satisfaction. Okay, and fourth, what did we just study now? Apply only those steps which are deemed necessary. Okay, or steps and procedures that are necessary for accomplishing the objectives. Okay, next, what is the third one? Describe each area of audit and its objective with written instructions so that the assistants can perform the same. Okay, so describe each area of audit with written instructions so that the assistants can perform the same. Okay, basically very simple. Consider all possibilities of error. Okay, these are just general guidelines. Okay, coordinate the procedures applied to related items. Okay, coordinate the procedures applied to related items. What are those related items? Can you think of any related items? Right, so there could be sales and whether TCS has been deducted or not. There could be purchases and whether TDS has been deducted or not. So these two procedures, when you're checking, it could be related, right? So coordinate the procedures. Whoever is doing the TDS reconciliation, match him, give the same sales reconciliation to him also. Okay, so that everything will get completed in one shot. Okay, we'll just try to go through that again. Okay, so firstly, stay within the scope and limitation. Try to tell it before me. Okay, and then make sure that prepare a written program. Next, determine evidence readily available and identify the best available evidence to obtain satisfaction. Right. Next, fourth is apply only those procedures which are relevant for achieving the objectives. Right, and then describe in written or provide written instructions with or rather to the areas of audit, so that the assistants can perform the same. And sixth, consider all possibilities of error. And lastly, coordinate procedures which are applied to related items. Okay, next, audit program and evidence. Okay, so audit program is designed to provide best possible evidence. Okay, so audit program is designed to perform best possible evidence through application of procedures and techniques. Okay, the best evidence is subjective and dependent on the professional judgment. Okay, auditor uses his training, knowledge and experience to determine the best evidence for each item of the financial statements. Okay, there are only three points relating to audit program and evidence. Okay, firstly, audit program is designed to provide best possible evidence. Okay, so this is one of the keywords. Okay, so this best possible evidence, right? Best possible evidence is a keyword. Okay, through application of procedures and techniques. Okay, this is dependent on professional judgment. Okay, this what is best evidence is subjective and dependent on the professional judgment. Basically, this training, knowledge and experience is nothing but the professional judgment itself. Okay, so application of training, knowledge and experience is nothing but your professional judgment itself. So that is just another step down. Okay, so it is like, first is audit program. Audit program is designed to give best possible evidence, right, and through application of techniques, right. And secondly, we are telling best possible evidence is subjective. Okay, it is subjective and dependent on professional judgment. And then we are going to further explain what is professional judgment. So auditor will use his training, knowledge and experience to determine best possible evidence for each item of the financial statement. Okay, next, there's a little part over here. So advantages of audit program. Okay, so here in advantages of audit program, very simple. Okay, so here I've just written the short forms, okay, of the keywords, and you can just go through that later. Okay, so firstly, it is, if you have an audit program, it gives a clear set of instructions. Okay, and then it gives a total perspective. Okay, clear set of instructions, I think it's very simple, right? It gives a total perspective, like it gives a bird's eye view of what is to be performed in the audit. Okay, and then it also helps in selection of assistants for the job on the basis of capability. Okay, so if a person is really good at auditing that particular entity, or that particular sector, then I will take that particular assistant into consideration. Okay, next, auditing without if you don't have a written program, there is a risk of overlooking records, so it reduces the risk of overlooking record. Okay, next, the assistants, by putting their signatures, they accept the responsibility of their work. Okay, accepting responsibility of work carried out by them individually. Okay, so that the work may be traced back to that assistant. So if there is no track of any audit program, who is going to be performing, who is going to be reviewing it, if there is no such thing, then you will not know who did it. Okay, you will not know who to hold accountable at the end. Okay, so here now the principal being the partner. Okay, can control the progress of various audits in hand by examination of audit programs. Okay, it serves as a guide for future audits. Okay, acts as a guide for future audits. Okay, next, a properly drawn up audit program serves as evidence in the event of charge of negligence being brought up by assistant. Okay, meaning if there is any so if there is a proper audit program, it serves as evidence in case somebody accuses you of being negligent. Okay, if somebody says you are negligent, then you can show them that this is our audit program, we performed everything as per the audit program, so shut up and get out. Okay, so we can say shit like that. Okay, next, now we'll just go through these short forms. Okay, and we'll just try to tell the full forms for it. Okay, so we'll just go step by step, no need to hurry. Okay, okay, what does this CSI, what does this CSI mean here? This CSI, choose a separate color. Okay, so what does the CSI mean? It gives a clear set of instructions. What is TP? It gives a total perspective of the audit, okay, of the work to be performed. What is this SA? Selection of assistants. Okay, what is ROO? Risk of overlooking the objectives. Next, R is the person who is to be held responsible or accountable. Okay, next, what is CP? It is control the progress of various audits, okay, through written audit reports. Okay, next, GFAs guides future audits. Okay, it serves as a guide for future audits. And lastly, it serves as an evidence for any charge, in the event of any charge of negligence brought up against the auditor. Okay, so we'll just try telling all that again. Okay, so CSI is clear set of instructions. Okay, clear set of instructions. Okay, next, what is TP? It gives a total perspective. Okay, next, SA talks about selection of auditor. Okay, selection of assistants, right? And next, RO is your risk of overlooking is reduced. Risk of overlooking records is reduced. Next, what is CP? Here it is, control the progress of multiple audits. Okay, GFAs guide for future audits, and lastly, it acts as an evidence. Okay, it acts as an evidence for charges brought against the auditor regarding his negligence. Okay, so in this we can show that we have taken reasonable skill and care. Okay, next. So what are the disadvantages of having an audit plan or an audit program? Okay, so the work may become mechanical and particular may be carried out without any understanding of the object. So they won't know what is the purpose of them doing that particular work. They're just doing it very mechanically without application of their mind, right? Next, program often tends to become rigid and inflexible, following set of grooves. The business may change in its operation of conduct, but the old program may still be carried on. Okay, so that's why it is because there may be change in the way entity performs its activities, but our audit program wouldn't have changed. So that is a disadvantage, obviously. Okay, next, inefficient assistance may take shelter. Okay, so ineffective assistance meaning the inefficient assistant meaning people who don't want to do work. Okay, so they'll be very lazy. They'll tell this is all that was written in the audit program, so that's all we checked. Okay, we didn't check any particular we didn't check in detail because it was not written in the audit program, right? So it gives kind of a defense for inefficient assistance. Okay, lastly, hard and fast audit program may kill the initiative of efficient and enterprising assistant. So in some cases, if the senior is so stuck with the audit program, it may if any article or if any assistant brings up a particular problem, they'll ask who asked you to do this? You just had to check ABCD. Who asked you to check XYZ, right? For example, right? So it may kill the initiative of an efficient and enterprising assistant. Okay, so that was the disadvantage. Okay, next, quality control for audit work, delegation and supervision of audit work. Okay, so an audit is a complex task involving number of people at different levels. Okay, so auditor will have to depend on assistants, technical experts and other auditors. Okay, so these two will come under SA 600 series. Okay, somewhere in 600 series it will come. Okay, next, in case of assistants, the auditor has to direct, supervise and review the work that is delegated to them. In case of other auditors and experts, the auditor has to obtain reasonable assurance that the work performed by them is adequate for the purpose of the auditor. Okay, and lastly, the objective of the auditor is to implement quality control procedures at the engagement level, meaning when that particular activity is being performed, in that level it is to be the quality controls are to be implemented. Okay, next, provides the auditor with reasonable assurance that audit complies with the professional standards and the regulatory and legal requirements. Okay, the auditor's report is issued in the okay, so there's only two things. Okay, this is very simple. Okay, so if you remember this will come in multiple chapters. Okay, so these two lines you'll have to remember because it will come in multiple chapters again and again. Okay, so the auditor firstly the audit complies with professional standards and regulatory and legal framework, and secondly, the report issued is appropriate in the circumstance. Okay, and the responsibility to express an opinion on the financial statements and its accountability will always be of the auditor. Okay, irrespective of the audit program or audit planning or whatever, at the end the responsibility to express an opinion on the financial statement will be that of the auditor. Okay, cool. See you, tata, bye bye, we're done with this chapter.